She arrived in Russia, a powerless German princess, only to overthrow her own husband and rule an empire through seduction, secrets, and strategy. To follow this incredible true story of power and betrayal, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Who was Catherine the Great? She was a woman who overthrew her own husband to become the Empress of Russia. She was a queen with many lovers, young, powerful, and handsome men. She was a ruler who expanded the Russian Empire and made it a global power. And she was a woman surrounded by rumors, scandals, and shocking secrets. We will slowly and deeply explore every part of her life: her childhood, her marriage, her secret love affairs, her struggles for power, and her incredible journey. If you are learning English, this is a wonderful way to improve your skills while enjoying a story that is real, a story that truly happened. So let's begin. The beginning of a future queen. Before she was the famous Catherine the Great, she was just a little girl named Sophia Augusta Frederica. She was born on May 2nd, 1729, in a place called Stettin in Prussia, which is now part of Poland. Her father was Prince Christian August. He was a strict and serious man, a man of rules and discipline. Her mother was Princess Johanna, a very ambitious woman who dreamed of power and influence. Little Sophia was not born a princess of Russia. She was a young, noble girl from a small German state. Her family was not very rich or very powerful, but her mother Johanna had big dreams for her. She wanted her daughter to marry into one of the great royal families of Europe. You see, in those days, royal families often married each other to keep their power. These marriages were not usually about love. They were about politics, money, and alliances between countries. Sophia was not an ordinary child. She was incredibly intelligent. While other girls played with dolls, Sophia loved to read books. She had a quick mind and learned to speak many languages, her native German, French, and later Russian. She was also very ambitious even as a little girl. She wanted to be someone important. She didn't dream of just being a wife. She dreamed of being a ruler, a queen, a leader. But in her time, women were not supposed to have power. They were expected to marry, have children, and obey their husbands. Sophia, however, had different plans for her life. One day, her mother received some very exciting news. The Russian Empress Elizabeth was looking for a wife for her nephew, the Grand Duke Peter of Russia. And who was Peter? He was the next person in line to become the emperor of all of Russia. He was a German prince, just like Sophia. He was Empress Elizabeth's nephew, and because she did not have any children of her own, he was chosen to be the next ruler. Sophia's mother saw this as a golden opportunity, the chance of a lifetime. If Sophia married Peter, she would one day become the Empress of Russia. Her family would finally gain the power and fame her mother always wanted. But there was one problem. Sophia had never met Peter. She had no idea what he was like. Would she like him? More importantly, would he like her? What kind of man was he? Little did Sophia know this marriage would change her life and the history of the world forever. At the young age of 14, Sophia had to leave her home in Germany and travel to Russia. The journey was long, cold, and very difficult. It took many weeks to reach the Russian capital, St. Petersburg. When she finally arrived, she was amazed and a little overwhelmed. Russia was huge. The palaces were covered in gold and seemed impossibly massive. The Russian people had different customs, they wore different clothes, and they spoke a language that sounded strange to her ears. She knew she had to learn Russian quickly. She had to adapt to this new culture. And most importantly, she had to impress the powerful Empress Elizabeth. Would she succeed? Or would she fail and be sent back home? And what about her future husband, Peter? What was he really like? Finally, the day came when Sophia met her future husband, Grand Duke Peter. In that moment, she was shocked and deeply disappointed. Peter was not the strong, handsome prince she might have imagined. He was childish, immature, and seemed quite foolish. He loved playing with his toy soldiers more than he liked talking to her. He didn't seem to care about his duty or the great responsibility of ruling Russia one day. All he wanted to do was have fun. Sophia realized something very quickly. She thought to herself, "I cannot trust this man. If he becomes the emperor, Russia will be in great danger. I must become strong, or my own life will be ruined." But she was only 14 years old. She had no power here. She had no friends. She knew she had to be smart, to be patient, and to wait for her chance. Her marriage was coming soon, and she had to prepare herself for a life that she now knew would be full of secrets, power struggles, and betrayal. She was now living in one of the most powerful countries in the world. Her mother, Princess Johanna, was excited and ambitious for her. But Sophia felt worried and very much alone in this huge new country. Everything was different in Russia: the language, the people, the food, the culture. But she had no choice. She had to adapt. She had to survive. And she was determined to succeed. This was just the beginning of her long journey to power. Life in Russia, a strange new world. When Sophia arrived in Russia, she was struck by the grand, almost overwhelming beauty of the capital, St. Petersburg. The palaces were enormous and shimmered with gold. The people wore thick, heavy fur coats to protect themselves from the freezing cold. Everything seemed luxurious, rich, and so completely different from her small, quiet home in Germany. But Sophia quickly realized something very important. This beautiful place was not just a fairy tale city. It was a place full of danger secrets and constant power struggles. She understood one thing very clearly: if I want to survive in Russia, I must be strong. I must learn everything I can. I must become smarter than everyone else around me. And so her transformation began. Her first great challenge was meeting Empress Elizabeth, the most powerful woman in Russia. The ruler of Russia at that time was Empress Elizabeth, the daughter of the great Peter the Great. Elizabeth was a strong, intelligent woman, full of life and energy. She had no children of her own, so she wanted to make sure that her nephew, Grand Duke Peter, would marry a good wife, someone who could help him and Russia. That is why she chose Sophia. When Sophia first met the Empress, she felt nervous, but she was also determined. She bowed respectfully and spoke politely, choosing her words with care. She knew she had to impress Elizabeth, and she did. The Empress liked Sophia immediately. She saw that this young German girl was intelligent, had good manners, and was very eager to learn. But there was one very important condition. Sophia had to convert to the Russian Orthodox religion. In those days, any foreign princess who married into the Russian royal family had to change her name and her faith. So Sophia was baptized into the Russian Orthodox Church. In that moment, she was no longer Sophia. She was given a new name, Catherine Alexeyevna. This was a huge moment in her life. She had taken her first real step toward becoming the future Empress of Russia. But she knew that a new name was not enough. She had to become Russian in her heart and in her mind. Catherine was determined to learn the Russian language. At first, it was very, very difficult. The Russian language was nothing like German or French. The words were hard to pronounce, and the grammar was complicated. But Catherine did not give up. She practiced day and night. She read Russian books, she spoke with the Russian servants, and she even secretly prayed in Russian late at night, wanting the words to feel natural. She wanted to prove to the Empress and to the Russian people that she was not just a foreign princess. She was one of them now. and slowly she succeeded. The people in the palace began to admire her dedication. Even the empress noticed how hard Catherine was working to fit in. This was an important lesson for Catherine. If you want to gain power, you must first earn the people's respect. But while she was becoming stronger and more Russian, her future husband Peter was becoming weaker in her eyes. Catherine was now officially engaged to Grand Duke Peter, the man who would one day be emperor. But there was a big problem. Peter was not a strong, intelligent, or serious man. Instead of preparing to rule a great empire like Russia, he spent his days playing with his toy soldiers. Catherine watched him closely and thought, this man is not a leader. If he becomes emperor, Russia will be weak. Someone else must take control. And deep in her heart, she knew that person had to be her. She did not love Peter. She did not respect him. But she knew she had to marry him. It was her only path to the throne. So she made a secret decision. She would marry Peter, but she would never let him control her. She would find a way to take power for herself. This was the beginning of her secret plan. And right here, I have a question for you. Imagine being Catherine at this moment. You are young in a foreign country, and you realize the person you must marry is not fit to lead. You have to make a choice, accept your fate, or decide to fight for power yourself. What would you do in her situation? It's a difficult question. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear what you think. In 1745, when Catherine was just 16 years old, she married Peter. It was a grand royal wedding. There was a huge celebration with fireworks, music, and enormous feasts that lasted for days. But inside, Catherine was not happy. There were even rumors that their marriage was never physically complete. Some people whispered that Peter was unable to be a proper husband. Catherine felt lonely and deeply frustrated. She had dreamed of a life full of excitement and importance, but now she felt trapped in a loveless, unhappy marriage. She needed something more. She needed love. She needed passion. She needed a man who could understand her sharp mind and her deep ambitions, and soon she would find one. In the royal court, there were many handsome and powerful men. Catherine was young, beautiful, and full of energy. She wanted attention, excitement, and romance. And then she met Sergei Saltykov. He was a charming and handsome Russian officer. He was everything Peter was not: strong, confident, and passionate. At first, they were just friends. They would talk and laugh together. But soon their friendship turned into something much more. Catherine was still married to Peter, the future emperor, but she began having secret meetings with Sergei. He made her feel alive. He made her feel loved and powerful. This was her first real love affair, but it would not be her last. Over the years, she would have many lovers: handsome generals, powerful politicians, and ambitious young men. Each affair, in its own way, would help her gain power, influence, and control. She was no longer the lonely little girl from Germany. She was becoming a true Russian empress, clever, strategic, and dangerous. But her biggest challenge was still ahead. Peter was next in line to become emperor. Catherine knew that if he became the ruler, her life and everything she was working for could be destroyed. She had to find a way to stop him, and that meant only one thing: she had to take the throne for herself. Catherine was no longer the innocent girl who had arrived from Germany years ago. She had lived in Russia for many years, and she had learned the secrets of survival power and manipulation. She knew she had to act fast. She had to find a way to take power before it was too late. This was the most dangerous time of her life. She was about to make a move that would change Russian history forever. In 1762, Catherine's worst fear came true. The Empress Elizabeth died, and Peter became emperor. Peter III. Now he had full power over Russia. But instead of making the country stronger, he made one mistake after another. He greatly admired Prussia, which was Russia's enemy, and he even made peace with them, giving away land that Russian soldiers had died for. The Russian army hated him for this. He ignored Russian traditions and tried to change the way people dressed and behaved. He insulted the powerful Russian Orthodox Church, which made many religious leaders turn against him. And he disrespected Catherine in public, often humiliating her and treating her as if she was nothing. Peter thought he was being clever and powerful, but in reality he was creating enemies everywhere he looked. Catherine watched, and she waited. She knew that her time was coming, the time for her to take the throne. But she could not do it alone. She needed strong allies, and she needed them fast. Catherine was not just beautiful and intelligent. She was a brilliant strategist. She knew that if she wanted to remove Peter from power, she needed the support of three key groups. First, the Russian army. The soldiers had to be willing to fight for her, not for Peter. Second, the nobles. The rich and powerful men of Russia had to believe that Catherine would be a better ruler. And third, the Russian Church. She had to convince the religious leaders to support her, not the man who had insulted them. So she started working in secret. She sent quiet messages to important generals in the army. She made promises to powerful noble families. She spoke to the church leaders in private meetings. And slowly, carefully, she built a network of support. But she also needed something more personal, something that would give her even more power and loyalty. She needed a special kind of love, and she found it with Grigory Orlov. Catherine had many lovers in her life, but Grigory Orlov was one of the most important. He was a strong, handsome military officer, but more importantly, he was completely loyal to Catherine. They were deeply involved in a passionate love affair. But Catherine did not love him only for romance. She needed him for her plan. Orlov was very well connected within the Russian army, and many soldiers respected him. Through Orlov, Catherine was able to gain the loyalty of many powerful military men. Now she had the army, the nobles, and the church on her side. The moment had arrived. It was time for action. The day was June 28, 1762. Catherine had prepared everything in secret. She put on a military uniform, got on a beautiful white horse, and rode to the barracks where the Russian soldiers were waiting. She stood tall and confident as she spoke to the troops. "My friends, my brave soldiers," she called out. "Russia is in danger. The emperor is weak, and he is destroying our great country. Will you fight for me? Will you fight for Russia?" The soldiers cheered loudly. "Long live Empress Catherine!" they shouted. At that moment, Catherine knew she had won. She marched with her army into the center of St. Petersburg, and without much resistance, she took the throne. Peter was shocked and afraid. He tried to escape, but it was too late. He was captured and forced to sign a document saying that he was no longer the emperor. Catherine was now Catherine II, the sole ruler of Russia. But there was still one last dangerous problem. Peter was still alive. A deposed emperor could always become a symbol for rebellion. And this is where the story gets even more dramatic. Catherine has the crown, but her husband, the former emperor, is her prisoner. What will happen to him? To find out how Catherine deals with this final threat and secures her power, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You don't want to miss what comes next in this incredible story. A few days later, Peter was dead. How did he die? No one knows for sure. The official story was that he died of an illness. But there were many rumors. Some said he was strangled in his prison cell. Others believed he was poisoned. But one thing was clear. Catherine was now the undisputed ruler of Russia. With Peter gone, she could now rule freely, and she would rule with more intelligence, strength, and ambition than any ruler before her. Catherine was now the Empress of Russia, but her work was just beginning. She wanted to make Russia stronger, richer, and more powerful than ever before. She planned to expand Russia's empire by conquering new lands. She wanted to modernize the country, bringing new ideas about art education and science to Russia. She aimed to strengthen the economy and encourage culture and philosophy, bringing in the great ideas from France and the rest of Europe. But she would also face incredible challenges, rebellions, betrayals, and wars. And of course, she would have many more love affairs, some that helped her, and some that nearly destroyed her. Catherine had taken the throne with intelligence planning and courage. But taking power was one thing, keeping it was another. She had enemies everywhere, nobles who did not trust her people, who still supported Peter, and foreign rulers who wanted to see her fail. But Catherine was not just a queen. She was a visionary, a strategist, and a ruler who understood people better than anyone. Now it was time for her to prove that she was not just a woman who had taken the throne. She was Catherine the Great. This was her era, her rule and her destiny. From the moment she became empress, Catherine had big dreams for Russia. She didn't just want to sit on the throne and enjoy her power. She wanted to change Russia, to improve it, to modernize it, and to make it the greatest empire in the world. She had studied the great philosophers of Europe, men like Voltaire and Montesquieu, who wrote about freedom, justice, and progress. Catherine wanted to bring these ideas to her country. But she knew she had to be careful. The nobles did not want too much change. The army did not want change. The church did not want change. If she moved too fast, they could turn against her. So she had to be smart. She had to make changes step by step without losing the support of the powerful people around her. And that is exactly what she did. Catherine started making changes immediately. She improved education because she believed that a strong empire needed educated people. She built new schools, universities, and libraries. She also made sure that girls could go to school too, which was very rare at that time. She modernized the government. Russia was a huge empire, and the old way of ruling was slow and inefficient. Catherine created new laws, a better administration, and a more organized leadership. She encouraged science and the arts. Catherine loved art, music, and literature. She invited famous artists, musicians, and scientists from Europe to come to Russia and share the latest ideas. She also worked to improve the economy. Catherine supported trade business and industry. She built new roads, bridges, and cities to help make Russia a richer and more powerful nation. These changes made Catherine very popular among intellectuals and progressive thinkers. But not everyone was happy. The nobles and the church were worried. They thought Catherine was bringing too much Western influence into Russia. They did not say anything yet, but some of them were waiting for a chance to remove her. And Catherine knew this, so she needed to make sure that her power was always protected. Catherine was not just a ruler, she was also a woman. And like all powerful rulers, she understood that love and relationships could be used as a tool for power. Throughout her life, Catherine had many lovers, but they were not just romantic partners. Each of these men played an important role in her empire. Some helped her politically, some gave her military support, and some simply made her feel alive and happy. Grigory Orlov had helped her take power from Peter. He was strong and loyal, but over time, Catherine lost interest in him. There was Stanisław Poniatowski, a Polish noble and one of Catherine's first great loves. She used her power to help him become the king of Poland. Then there was Grigory Potemkin, perhaps the greatest love of her life. He was a military genius, a brilliant politician, and Catherine's closest advisor. Some people even believe they had a secret marriage. As Catherine got older, she continued to have young lovers, often choosing handsome and intelligent men who could entertain and support her. But unlike other rulers, Catherine did not let love control her. She was always in charge. She chose her lovers, and when she no longer needed them, she moved on. She never let her heart weaken her rule. Catherine was not just a reformer, she was also a conqueror. She wanted Russia to be stronger and bigger, and she spent most of her life expanding the empire. Under her rule, Russia grew larger than ever before. She conquered Crimea, which gave Russia access to the Black Sea, an important route for trade and the navy. She took land from Poland, working with other European powers to divide the weak country. She also fought wars against the Ottoman Empire, Russia's old enemy, and won important victories. By the end of her reign, Russia had become one of the most powerful empires in the world. But her success also created enemies, and soon she would face one of the biggest challenges of her life. Not everyone in Russia was happy with Catherine. The peasants who were poor and had very hard lives began to rise up against her. A man named Yemelyan Pugachev, a former soldier, started a rebellion. He pretended to be Peter III, Catherine's dead husband, returned from the dead. He told the people, "Catherine is a foreigner. She is not a true Russian. She took the throne unfairly. Follow me, and I will give you freedom." Thousands and thousands of people joined him. They started burning cities, killing nobles, and fighting against Catherine's army. For a moment, it looked like Catherine might actually lose her throne. But she acted quickly and decisively. She sent her best generals and soldiers to crush the rebellion. After months of brutal fighting, Pugachev was captured and executed. Catherine had won again. But this rebellion taught her an important lesson. She realized she had to keep tight control over the people and make sure that no one could ever challenge her rule so seriously again. Catherine ruled Russia for more than 3 decades. She had transformed the country, made it stronger, and expanded its territory. She had won wars, built cities, and created schools. She had been a queen, a reformer, and a strategist. She had outsmarted her enemies, loved powerful men, and controlled an empire larger than any other woman in history. But even the greatest rulers do not live forever. As Catherine grew older, she became even more powerful. Most rulers slow down in their later years, but not Catherine. She seemed to work harder than ever. She continued expanding Russia's borders and modernizing the country. She spent hours every day reading writing letters, meeting with advisors, and making decisions. She also never stopped enjoying life. She loved art, music, books, and conversation. She surrounded herself with intelligent and talented people. She still had young lovers, but now they were mostly companions rather than political partners. But even as she enjoyed her incredible power, she knew something was missing. Catherine the Great had 3 known children, her heir Paul I, Alexei Bobrinsky, her son, with Grigory Orlov, and possibly a daughter named Elizabeth Temkina, rumored to be her child with Potemkin. But Paul was the most important, and their relationship was very troubled. Catherine was married to Peter III, but their marriage was cold and distant. In 1754, Catherine gave birth to a son, Paul. This raised big questions. Was Paul really Peter III's son? Or was his real father someone else? Many people, including Catherine herself in her own letters, hinted that Paul's real father might have been Sergei Saltykov, her early lover. But no matter who his biological father was, Paul was officially recognized as the son of Peter III. This meant he was the rightful heir to the Russian throne. If there was one thing Catherine truly regretted, it was her relationship with her son Paul. He was her only legitimate son, the one who was supposed to be the next emperor. But Catherine never trusted him. She thought he was weak, too emotional, and too difficult. She kept him away from power and refused to let him have any real political influence. Paul grew to hate his mother for this. He believed that she had stolen the throne from his father, Peter III. He waited his entire life for the day when he could take power and undo everything she had built. Catherine even thought about replacing him as her heir. She wanted her grandson Alexander to be the next emperor instead. But before she could make that official, something happened that no one expected. On November 16, 1796, Catherine woke up early, as she always did. She planned to spend the day working on government documents. She had a busy schedule just like any other day. But then, as she was walking to her bathroom, she suddenly collapsed. Her servants found her lying on the floor, unable to move or speak. They immediately called for doctors and priests. Catherine was still alive, but barely. For the next 24 hours, she remained unconscious. People whispered in the palace, "Is the empress dying?" Her enemies waited for the moment she would finally be gone. Her supporters prayed that she would wake up. But she never did. On November 17, 1796, at the age of 67, Catherine the Great passed away. The moment Catherine died, her son Paul became emperor, and the first thing he did was try to destroy everything she had worked for. Paul hated his mother. He believed she had stolen his birthright and humiliated him his whole life. So as soon as he became ruler, he changed many of Catherine's policies. He tried to erase her legacy. He punished her allies, removed her reforms, and made new laws that went against everything she believed in. But Paul's rule did not last long. Many people hated him, and just 5 years later, he was assassinated. His son Alexander I took the throne and brought back many of Catherine's ideas. Catherine's dream of a powerful modern Russia was too strong to be destroyed. Even after her death, her influence remained. Catherine ruled Russia for 34 years. She was one of the longest ruling female leaders in history. She changed Russia forever. She expanded its borders, adding new lands and making Russia one of the biggest empires in the world. She modernized the country, introducing education science and Western ideas. She was even one of the first rulers to promote education for women. She was a master of power who took the throne in a world dominated by men and ruled with strength and intelligence. She left behind a legend. The story of Catherine is one of ambition, love, power, and brilliance. Many rulers have come and gone, but few have left a legacy as powerful as Catherine the Great. This was the story of a woman who changed the world, and that is where our story concludes for today. This one was a real journey, wasn't it? I am so curious to hear your take on it all. What were your final thoughts on Catherine's life and her rule? Do you have any lingering questions about why a character did what they did, or about any part of the story? Please leave all your opinions, theories, and questions below in the comments. I truly love reading them and building this conversation with all of you. Thank you so much for joining me. Until the next story, take care and keep learning.